your martial arts movie podcast.
Haha! I threw that shit before I walked in the room!
Featuring drunken Thai boxer Will.
Too bad you will die.
The also drunken wrestler Mark.
I said I don't want trouble!
And drunken karate master Zero.
You've lost your balls.
And now,
Call. I know Kung Fu. You know, baby.
Fists of Fail.
Hey Zero, do you know why this is called Contour? Because it took me a minute to figure that out.
I do not know. I think the original title was The Agent, and that doesn't really make too much sense to me either.
Yeah, well, I think it has something to do with the story, but it's a what's that word when you it's like a word is a combination of two words. Whatever. This is a contour. Contour.
Oh, clever. I like that.
No, it's not clever.
Oh, it is clever. I like it. But you had to explain it to me, so I would have never known.
Well, I know. I'm just guessing. I don't know, because otherwise, I don't know what the hell contour is. All I know is that it's one of Eric Jacobus's most popular early films, and it just dawned on me, we haven't talked about Eric Jacobus.
We have not.
Well, we might have mentioned him a little bit. He has his own show on the YouTube, his own little podcast, which is a treasure trove of great information for people like us who love action design and action history. In fact, I think Eric Jacobus is, in my opinion, one of the top scholars. Like, he's very scholarly about action design. He knows the history. He knows how to talk about it. He knows just all the background behind a lot of this history behind martial arts cinema. So I really respect him. It's really hard to sit through some of those 3-hour long discussions that he'll have with some of his guests. But hey, I'm a bit of a hypocrite because we're here and we're going to talk about this for 2 hours.
Oh boy. I mean, we probably could, because Contour is fucking action packed. Holy crap. There is a lot of action in here. And I knew that Eric Jacobus is a big fan of 80s, 90s Hong Kong martial arts films. And you can definitely see that influence in what he's done in this movie. And he has jam-packed this film to the brim with so much choreography. It's going to be a long discussion.
Oh, yeah. There's a couple things to unpack there. The fact that this is not his first production. Watching this, I was going to make this little joke that this previs video is really nice. I can't wait for the final movie. That was what I was going to say about this. It's an early film. This is essentially a very extensive home video, right? That that Eric and a couple of his friends did together when Eric was still in his early 20s. Everyone's just baby faced in this movie. And majority, not everybody, well, I mean, I guess majority of the cast who is involved in the movie have eventually moved on to, bigger productions now. Freaking Eric Jacobus and his Kratos in God of War, and we have a couple of these cast members who are now working in major double to triple A level video games, doing the action direction. So everyone this is an early start for a lot of these folks. So, but it's impressive that this isn't even the first of many, because it's it shows its immaturity in a way, outside of the action itself.
Oh, okay.
The action's
sure,
good, but
sure. I think
the filmmaking is still very premature.
Yeah, immature is actually, it's a good word, not in the sense that it's so negative, but it's almost like, yes, this is a bunch of 20-year-olds working on a passion project, because that's really what this is. This is like the best passion project you can put out there, because it is highlighting these incredibly skilled, talented martial arts and stunt people, because they're called the stunt team, so aptly named. and they are just taking everything that they're good at and throwing it on screen in our faces for us to enjoy. So it's so crazy how this couldn't happen with any of them now because of time restraint, because of budget and whatnot. This is a bunch of friends filming for 60 days. Like,
yeah.
That's why this movie happened, and you can't get that in a professional production because it just won't be allowed.
Yeah.
So like the fact that everyone was able to come together and do this is just so amazing what we get to see on screen.
Yeah. It makes me wonder if we're missing out and not talking about any other the Eric Jacobus' other works, but this is the one that I think gets the most praise. I actually didn't know about much of this at all until you highlighted it for me. That I guess this is the 20-year anniversary of it, right? Supposedly, I don't know. It says the release was 2005, but I'm hearing in some sources that it's 20 years, but maybe 20 years since they
right. Well, they
got
originally
together
filmed it in 2004, probably maybe released some places 2005, 2006, because the IMDb says 2006. So yeah,
okay.
It's all up in the air. But they filmed it in 2004. So hey, 20 years, man. Look at where we are. Apparently, this film was a reaction to the Bourne Identity style of fighting. Many people often constantly say they don't like that style of fighting. They don't like the style. Well, maybe not the style of fighting. They don't like the way it's directed and it's filmed with all the shaky cam. He constantly critiques that, and that's fine. So what did he do? He and his friends got together and made a film that is just filmed and shot in a way where you can see everything clearly, almost clearly. I mean, this is, I don't know.
Who would have thought that would be something that people who are using their eyeballs would want, right?
That's true. Yeah, I don't know what they were filming on. So this is a 4K upscale. I don't think this was filmed. This is probably digital, so they had to
Definitely
upscale
digital.
it. But like, it's still amazing how the upscale captures a lot of the clarity in what the camera people were able to just put on frame.
Yeah, no, it's definitely digital because there's one scene in particular. You can definitely notice it during any scenes with like blinds, light shining through the blinds. There's like that digital interpolation that you definitely see from the early 2000s. Like I remember when I had a little tiny digital camera, and like it had that effect. And I'm sure they're working with that, within their limited budget too. They are admittedly, and like all the cast members have admitted that obviously this is very, very low budget, and it shows in many ways. So, and you can't fault them for that.
I mean,
at all.
not there's anything wrong with it. This is, like I mentioned before, it's a passion project. It's a bunch of people getting together making a film. So they have a budget. They used everything they could at their disposal. It boggles my mind that they were able to get this warehouse to work in. They had friends who were able to just let them shoot there at night and do all these crazy things. You can sometimes spot people in the background.
Yeah, the workers.
Walking. The walkers. That's like one of my favorite things. Like, oh, they can't stop filming because they're in the groove and they got the shot. So you're just gonna have to look at that little guy in the background if you look away from the fighting. It's like, oh, hey, look, there's that little
I love
person.
that. No, I do love that because it's just like, like do what you can, and like they have the movie, because it has a couple of oneers, like longer take action choreography that's going on. They can't stop it midway just because he's not even an extra. It's just literally a guy who just happens to work at the warehouse, happens to be caught on camera. It's like, well, too bad. And I mean, it would be very easy for me to pick apart the movie and complain about the things that don't work, right? But everything is going to have that little asterisk, which is obviously, like low budget, whatever. Low budget, it's a passion project, early film from all these guys. All that stuff is true, but also this is pretty much the very beginning of YouTube. Like YouTube is essentially not even what it is today, right? Like this is, so think about like today, we have other up and coming stunt and martial arts groups that were junior to like this generation, right? Like the Martial Club, for example. Like now the Martial Club is doing great. They're now in Hollywood, but they didn't. I don't feel like they needed to make like a 90-minute feature, right, to show off.
Okay,
things.
I see what you're saying. Right.
Right, like
it's interesting that Eric's generation made a movie, essentially a movie,
mm-hmm.
and now because of social media and YouTube, you can make shorts. You can show snippets or clips of really great moves and start to build a reputation and a notoriety from that. As to where here they made like 90 minutes of ass kickery, and then they had to put it on DVD and sell it and go around, and like you just had to make a name for yourself in such a different way. Exactly.
Like imagine, there's no YouTube. There's barely. This is like the nascent state of social media and videos on the internet. So what do you gotta do? Like if you want distribution, well, you have to, and you want to sell that you're badass at choreography and stunts and all that. Well, you want to put it on these DVDs that can be distributed, but you can't just have fighting on it. You need to tie it all together with a story, even if it's a little lackadaisical in like how you do it. But you need to have that, you need to put it into a film format and a long form format. So I think Dennis Ruel, who plays kind of like the villain of the movie, like he himself said, like, all right, after the production of this, we need to take acting classes. It's like, because like they know it's like that's not
it's fine. This is like student film level quality. I'm not expecting anybody to emote in a certain way. If anything, Eric Jacobus and Dennis Ruel, like they're in the most feature stuff I've seen. So I think their acting is fine because the way they wrote their characters is just them. Yeah. So I'm not expecting anything, and it works perfectly for them. Mm-hmm. I think the other actors fare worse.
Yeah.
With Stephen Reedy being the standout because of his over the top performance.
What
this
what
like
do you
Tai
mean?
Bo sort of guy.
Yeah. I mean, so to backtrack on that, he is like this sensei-esque character who's created his own martial art called Tai Pho, based on pho, because I think was it Steven's he's half Vietnamese, so I didn't know that being half Vietnamese means you have the obligatory extreme Asian stereotype accent, but that does not age well. Oh, speaking of which, the movie doesn't really age well if you really take a step back and think about it. There's a lot of angles you can tackle that. Some of the comedy is very dated
right. This is
the time,
kind of edgy, trying to push the boundary a little bit, say things that are very un-PC, and it's fine. It's just of the time. It doesn't get too offensive, or anything like that. But you can just tell this is in a time capsule in 2004 when this type of writing was becoming more prevalent.
Yeah. But I would say that but the incredibly accented Oriental sensei character, who's like that's like one example of just of being dated. Plus the fact that Steven's character, like I couldn't make out anything he said throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the issue too. His overacting and then his thick Asian accent made it hard to tell what he was saying.
He was blowing out the mic like this the entire time. It was like I couldn't make out anything. I had to turn on the subtitles just for him, and even then it's like okay. But then and then we have the other one played by Ed.
Edward Kahana Jr. playing the prince of a fabricated country that I'm guessing is like some sort of stand-in for urethra. I thought it was Bulgaria.
It's the ovary, the country of ovary, he has this really strong, high, shrilly voice. throughout the whole movie. And I think he's
It's a
supposed
choice.
to play like a child. Is he supposed to be playing a child?
No,
I don't know.
I think I kind of see what they're going with it. It kind of seems like he's supposed to be the over-enthusiastic fob who just came over here. He wants to learn about America. Because he's from another country, and so he's just so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. He's going on a tour with Eric Jacobus, who's supposed to be showing him these landmarks, so he's just really excited. And that's it. He's just naive. I think that's his character. And Edward plays him too over the top. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fine. You know, Eric is just very flat, and so the other characters kind of have to overdo it. So
Sure.
it's, you know, it's just what it is.
It is what it is. So we're talking around the story, around the characters. So Zero.
Oh, God.
What is the story?
Man, I watched this a second time and I still felt like I wasn't getting certain details. So Eric Jacobus is, I guess he owes money to, what's his name? Stephen Reedy's character. And so he does these odd jobs for him, trying to, kind of like a hitman for hire almost. And because that's not really working out for him, he also has a side business where he runs tours. He picks up 3 characters. So you have Edward Kahana, who is the prince of some nation, his bodyguard, who's played by Andy Leung, and then you have the 3rd tourist, who is played by Tyler Wang. And I don't know where it goes from there, because it's just a lot of coincidences. I believe what happens is Edward Kahana's parents, they lose a videotape. And so because they're royalty, they put out an award for it. And everyone's like, okay, well, we need this videotape. But I don't really know what the purpose of the videotape is. I feel like that kept on going over my head.
Well, they want the videotape, and then there's Dennis, who happens to get a hold of the videotape, and once he has hold of the videotape, then, I mean, he's essentially like holding that thing ransom against the king and queen of that country, right? And then like you said, a lot of coincidences, and then we also ultimately culminate into the final battle, because not only does Dennis have the tape, but he also is holding hostage the actual prince, who is Edward. But yeah, so the story doesn't. None of this matters. The story is not important, really. If this whole cast and crew was born like a generation later, they probably wouldn't have made this movie, honestly. Like, they would have just created a very long, extensive previs, right?
Sure.
I think it's still really impressive that they went and did this up to 2000s, but like, this is not why you come to watch a movie. You're not there to see for the story. You're not even there for the characters. You're there because you just want to watch long action. And that's what you're getting here. And there's a lot of it. In fact, the last 40 minutes is non-stop. It is relentless.
Well, actually, it's like there's actually 20 minutes of almost non-stop fighting, and then like it kind of breaks for resolution, and then it just ends up.
Really? I thought I counted for longer, but even then, there's a final. There's an even technically final, a brawl, But like, it's backloaded, but there's still fighting sprinkled throughout.
There's still a lot of fighting in the middle of the movie, and there's some fights that I just thought, we didn't need that. like why was that there? You have a dream sequence with Edward Kahana chasing after a white rabbit, chasing after a videotape, and there's still decent choreography. It's not memorable, but if you were to take that sort of choreography, it's almost like filler fight scenes. Like, if you were to take that and put it maybe in a different production, you might think, oh, okay, that's a nice little moment that could have been expanded upon. Something more complicated could have been thrown in. But having filler fights like that, I felt okay, maybe it's there because they're thinking about timing. Okay, now we just need a fight scene to break this up, and then go on to story again.
Oh, that's a very good theory, but that kind of alludes to what I was saying before, like because they just inserted that one scene in there. It's like, honestly, you could just pluck that out of the movie, like without a context, and just throw it on YouTube, and there you go. That's just something to get eyeballs on. You don't need
Sure.
Yeah, so like, but I think even Eric Jacobus' channel, like he does it himself. Like he has taken scenes of himself and like put them in as separate videos, and they get enough traction as well. So like, again, it's you don't technically watch the whole movie as a whole, but I mean, whatever.
I mean, I feel like this movie does work. I could, because besides the fights we just talked about, the dream sequence, I think everything makes sense for a fight scene for the most part. Because you have the one in the beginning, he's fighting the guys because he's trying to get the bag. Yeah, that makes sense. The next one, he realized he needs another fighter to go with him on another job, and he realizes that the prince has a bodyguard, so he uses that to test the bodyguard. It's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then after that, we get to see like Dennis Ruel and his buddy do the fight to, I don't know, take back the warehouse. Like, sure, that works. And then after that, it's all the fighting at the end. So It kind of all works, minus that dream sequence for me.
Yeah. Well, again, like we kind of said, like we have to give it a bigger pass because of all those reasons that you mentioned before. But like those things in between, it was still kind of hard for me to sit through, because I'm like, I just want to get to the action, because I know this isn't their forte, and whatever. Like,
great. So let's talk about the action.
Let's talk about the action then.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, I like, as much as I appreciate the fights, this is, and I don't want anyone to take this out of context. I think that the quantity is really high. There's a lot of fighting in this, and the quality's still high, but because the quantity is so high, it makes the quality look like it's not as high.
Yes.
Because the quantity is so high. It's so much fighting in it, and at that point, like, I stopped. My eyes started to glaze over, especially at the end, because there's so much relentless fighting.
That was becoming my issue too, because I was just loving all the choreography I was seeing, and then when you get to the ends, what happens is it really is almost nonstop fighting, because you have all these fights going on in the warehouse, and for the most part, they let almost all the fights play out, but then they have to cut to what other people are doing, and you give them fights. So you're putting fights like one after another, and it gets overwhelming to just see constant motion over and over and over again. And as much as I like a lot of the choreography in this, I think because they're still in this, like, new phase of putting it all together, maybe in their careers, I don't think they understand pacing of certain fights. Because if you look at one of the earlier fights in the movie where Eric is fighting Andy Leung, the bodyguard, they're fighting in the dojo. That is almost non-stop fighting and chaining moves over and over and over again. When somebody falls, they immediately go into movement. So there is no break anywhere. So you can, like, hold your breath through the whole thing and then release at the end. And there's no sort of rhythm to it. There's no place for us to take a breather, get reactions, notice what's going on from other characters. Even though sometimes we hate that stuff, there is a rhythm to making the fights feel, I guess, like, more natural. And in here, it's 0 to 100, then just bombardment of motion, and then it ends.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, okay. I took all that in. What do I remember from that? And for me personally, it gets difficult because I'm only remembering, I remember the big hits.
Right. It's like you had to download a lot of information just now. And actually, like, I've watched this twice as well. and like I will come out of fight scene thinking like that was just too much. I don't even know what. Maybe I had like one or two highlights, but there were so many stunts in there and so many big hits, big moments, but there's no breathing room in between it, so I couldn't absorb that and be like, oh, I remember that. If there's so many good big moments, then I'm only gonna remember a handful of them, if even that much. Like I'll probably remember one or two, but to your point, I think that the fact that like there'll be these major pratfalls and major hits and people seriously getting hurt on screen, there's not really a lot of consequence for it, like when you're seeing it in the characters. Like,
well, it happens so abruptly, and then the fighting continues. Like
exactly.
Like I mentioned, there's no room to like take that in. Like when Eric is fighting Andy Leung again in the dojo, he'll do these crazy pratfalls, and then Andy Leung goes right in immediately to attack him. There's no room for breathing.
Yeah. You need to see the character in pain. You need to see him wincing. Yes. Like that's how we know that was impressive.
Or that hurt. You know, we don't have. It's funny. There's almost no reaction shots in that moment. It gets a little better in some fights where they start to add in slow motion because you see more interesting moves or some more serious falls. And I feel like those are the better fights for me personally because it has a better rhythm. Like the baseball bat fight, that has a lot of slow motion thrown in throughout. So I feel like I took that in so much better than for the dojo fight, for example. But in terms of choreography, I like the dojo fight because I just like how these two fighters are just so ferociously going at each other.
Yeah. I think the best way to explain this to those who might not even agree with us is imagine you're watching a stand-up comedian and he tells a joke, he tells a punchline, you're laughing, and then while you're still laughing, he keeps talking. He's like he's on to the next joke already.
Right.
Like wait, you have to pause, wait for the audience to absorb what you just said.
Perfect. I love that. Yeah, that's great.
That's how this movie feels, because it can be kind of relentless and like it's great. It really is. Like you're still enjoying it, but it just feels like it never lets you breathe and take in what you had. But again, this isn't a complaint that like saying that they're hack frauds. They're not saying that.
Oh no, they are. Yeah, they're total hack frauds. Yeah, working on video games and major productions now, all of them.
Eric Jacobus, come at me, bro. No, I'm saying that obviously this is they're early in the career, very talented and young, very young and rubbery, stunt performers who are capable of dishing out the damage, but also receiving damage and just bouncing back up. But in terms of overall filmmaking, being second unit directors or being choreographers, like there's still some things that they need to iron out at the time. So obviously 2 decades later, they're like I'm sure
they're professionals in the
industry. They're professionals, exactly. Yeah. So like those are little tiny minor complaints, and I think we'll be echoing it as we move into our Patreon section. Right? Is there anything else you want to talk about before we get there?
No, I mean we could just keep on going on and on, but at this point we're gonna go specifically into the action because there's not so much story to talk about. We kind of just glazed over it. I don't think we really need to go into detail on that. But there are specific moments in the fights I would like to detail. So that's where this Patreon section comes in. So if you want to hear us talk even more about this movie, because there's a lot of fight scenes, we can't talk about everything. This is this might turn into like Drunken Master 2 or the Raid 2, where it's just us just trying to cover everything and we just can't do it, but it's still a long conversation. So if you want to hear all that, consider subscribing to us on Patreon.
All right, that's well said. All right, with all that said, let's talk about Contour. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. We're at the point where we give our recommendations, but there's a whole wealth of audio you would be listening to here if you follow us on Patreon. There you can listen to the entire episode, including an exclusive action breakdown of the fights in the movie. And now on to our final thoughts. crossfade to credits, and then that is Contours.
That's
Contour.
Hey.
Yeah.
We did it.
We did it. We
talked about a lot of the fighting in there.
Yeah, we definitely missed a lot of shit in there, but that's because there's a lot of shit in this movie, and there's no way we can talk about it all. There's too much. There's too much in the best way possible. So
yes.
Yeah, Eric Jacobus. I mean, loved that guy. He's clearly made a name for himself. You know what? 2 decades after the fact, but like this is a good This is a good first showing. Well, I mean, it's not first, but it's a good early showing of his work, and I'm glad to see that he's, only improved his craft ever since. But this is a really fun one, for sure.
This is an amazing passion project. It's kind of crazy how it kind of took so long for it to come out, like waiting for the 20-year anniversary. That's a shame, like, because this was never on my radar. I knew he had some other movies, and I have watched them. So, like, I just didn't know this was in his filmography, and I wish it came out sooner, but I'm glad it came out, because this is a lovely, lovely, jam-packed action film.
Yep. Can't agree more. So, I will say, as much as I enjoyed it, and I obviously didn't love the story. I
don't think anyone's gonna say they love the story.
Exactly. So like, I don't want to harp on the things that I even put disclaimers around all my complaints early on. It's like, that's not why you're watching this movie. I will say though, this is not an easy recommend for me. For anyone who's not a hardcore action head.
I see. Okay.
I like, if someone's like, oh, I want to go to watch a good action movie, I would not recommend this at all. I would be like, wait, how many action movies have you watched? He's like, well, I've heard of Donnie Yen. I'm like, okay, no, do not watch, do not watch Contour, because you will not enjoy this, because you won't understand the nuances here. However, if you do like action and you really like all the shit that you and I are into, like, this might be a recommend.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, this is for us. This is for the people who really like fights and action and like really go deep into it like we do, because that's what they are. They're fans of 80s, 90s Hong Kong movies, action, and just action movies in general. They made a film. This film is like for us. The story is irrelevant, because they just need it to be a vehicle so that they can jam pack it with action. Yeah.
It's a time capsule. This movie is a time capsule. Like, it's like, something like this can only be made in the 2000s or prior, really. But like this, we don't need movies like productions like this anymore. We have demo reels, we have previs. If you want to make your name for yourself, and in the stunt scene or the martial arts scene, I guess stunt scene really. This day and age, you have YouTube, you have Vimeo.
That's kind of a shame, because yes, I do get it. If you want work, you're gonna focus on a demo reel more than making a movie. But this is amazing what we got. So it's a shame that we don't have modern stunt enthusiasts, YouTubers trying to make a movie, in their own time, outside of the system, right? Because you have the smaller indie filmmakers, yes, but like, they're not even, I don't even feel like they're indie filmmakers just yet here, because they're so new and so raw. So like, I feel like we don't have an equivalent like that, because like you said, people are making shorter form content, because that's how you're going to get more notoriety, as opposed to somebody making 140 minutes of beatdowns.
Yeah. I mean, so that's the thing. But with something like this, like, I think what makes it stand out is the fact that there is really good quality stuff in here, and everyone's showcasing what they can do, from not only the performing side but the choreography side, because everyone had a hand in choreography, essentially. So like, everyone's bringing out their best, but because of the fact that like I do say things like I don't care about the story, and I think the characters are annoying, and the writing is not all there. It's like a part of me is you can basically say like, oh, then just skip all that and just go straight to the action. In which case you could say like, we'll just cut that out and just make those separate videos, almost like mini demo reels. So like that's where it's like, that's one side of it I can come at it from, but then the other side of it saying things that like, it's just impressive that they were able to cobble it all together and make it one long cohesive movie. So I do appreciate that. But yeah, it's a time capsule. Like, you can only have done this at the time. I don't think anyone's gonna do this anymore. It's like, like why put yourself through that?
Right. Well, that's me. Like, I'm lamenting. It's almost like a lost art, right? Making your own movie, because nobody really does that now. Like, if you're indie, you have some sort of budget. If you're labeled an independent director, now we don't have these no budget passion projects anymore that at least I'm aware of. Mm-hmm. I would love to see it, because you have short films, but like I want to see a bunch of Gen Zers getting in a room together, beating the shit out of each other for 90 minutes and getting their take on it, like, because this is the people like in our age range, in our group. Like, I want to see the next stunt people and martial artists. I want to see them get together, beat the shit out of each other, put it on film, and then I want to see what that's like.
Okay. I mean, like, we're talking about Gen Z here, so like, if you're talking about putting this all on TikTok, like, we're gonna need like 400 short clips of one long ass movie, kind of like what they did with Force Awakens. Did you hear about it? Yeah, they did. They released the Force Awakens in small little clips.
In TikTok clips?
On TikTok.
Oh my
TikTok. Yeah. So like, you could technically watch the whole movie if you wanted to.
Shit. All right, TikTokers, make it happen. Make 140 TikToks that somehow translate into a fight film. I'll watch it. I don't do TikTok, but I'll watch it if somebody does that.